Awake. Thank you, Mona. You've humbled and inspired us, and we've also been galvanized. And hopefully, after my talk, you'll feel a little bit empowered to deal with the negativity that you might face every day in the workplace. As mentioned, I manage diversity and inclusion programs for PayPal, and I'm tasked with building an inclusive environment at work. My background is in tech. I've worked in tech for 15 years, and so it's interesting to be sort of on the tech side and the HR side of the house and see how the two groups actually work together. I'm going to be talking today about how to deal with anti-Muslim bigotry in the workplace. There are major confrontations that happen, there are microaggressions that happen, or maybe you work in a place where everybody's just really cool and you really want to build a friendly, inclusive environment and have allies. And so I'm going to talk about dealing with all three of those situations and hopefully being proactive in some situations and obviously reactive in other situations. And so I'm going to start each section with a story and then explain a little bit more about the story. And so I'm going to start with a story about my first job. I graduated from school in May of 2001, and I started my first job on August 27th of 2001, which was 2 weeks before September 11th happened. So I was fresh out of school, I wore a hijab, I had moved to a state where I knew nobody, and 2 weeks into work, a guy comes into my office, right? September 11th happens. I'm 21, he's probably 6'4", weighs 250 pounds, and the G-rated version of the story is that he threatened to kill me and my family and told me to go back home. And I'm literally just stuck at my desk. I'm tucked into my desk with this man yelling at me and I don't know what to do and there's nowhere to go because I'm in the corner of my office and I was scared out of my mind and shocked. I did share my office with a guy named Mark. Now, what happened to me is horrible, but what's more interesting is how Mark dealt with the situation. Because he stood up, he pushed the guy out of the office, he shut the door and locked it, and then he checked in with me. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. Are you okay? How are you? I didn't know what to say. I'm tucked into my desk, I was thinking about a sentence and I'm like mid-typing, right? It's kind of awkwardly shocked, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna take care of you. Calls my boss. Then he calls office security, and he waits, and he makes sure I'm taken care of. He stays with me while my boss fills out the HR paperwork. He stays with me while security talks to me and gets all the details of what happens. But then he does something else that I didn't know till months later. He told all of the people I worked with what happened, and he made sure someone walked with me to my car every day. He made sure someone went to lunch with me every day. He knew I had just moved there and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any friends there. I didn't even know the people I worked with. And the guy who had attacked me actually sat 2 offices down. I don't know who made sure that guy moved offices or if he got fired. I had no idea what happened. I never saw that guy again. But that's pretty amazing that this guy who didn't know me made so many choices to positively impact me. And I tell you this story because Mark's reaction was pretty amazing. He was really thoughtful. How many of us know how we would react in a confrontation? Do you have any idea what you would do? It's not something you think about. But for example, many women will take a self-defense class because if you have practiced being attacked, you can build the muscle memory on how to respond. So I tell you this story to help you be thoughtful on how you would react if you're attacked or if you see someone else being attacked. Now I have to pause because in reality, you have to remember the first thing to do is to maintain your safety, right? We all know what happened in Portland. We know that these men were stabbed and 2 of them died, right? You have to maintain your safety, and sometimes that means you call 911 or you call security to make sure that safety is maintained. And so I have to ask you all, you're gonna go back to work next week. Who has your security number memorized, right? You don't always just call 911 in your office. Sometimes you have to hit 9 or 4 and something else. Would you even know who to call? So I ask you all, when you go back to work, to figure out how to contact your security and program that number into your phone so that you're not fumbling when you have a problem. The other thing I'll point out is that this is something I've learned over time. I serve on the City of Austin and Travis County Hate Crimes Task Force. And I know this now, and I can speak to it from my own personal experience. I was a victim of several hate crimes. I never once called the police. Not once. Not when I was almost stabbed, not when this guy threatened my life at work. I don't know why. I think I didn't think about it. And hate crimes and hate incidents go unreported. It's the norm, right? I think it's something, and this is a lay statistic, but for every 1,000 incidents that happened, I think one gets reported, right? Has everyone here experienced a hate incident or hate crime or some slur said, did y'all call the police? No. And that data being reported is extremely important, because the data is what informs policy. And if the data doesn't exist, it's like those incidents didn't exist and then policy never changes. So it's really important that you all become educated about how this is handled in the local city that you live in, but also in your workplace, right? Because it's where you spend most of your time. So I also recommend that you check in with the powers to be in your office or workplace, right? Check in with your manager or your HR, chief medical officer, whoever it is, and to ask them, like, hey, there's a lot of hostility towards Muslims. I'm just curious. If I see something, what do? Who do I talk to? What do I even need to report? Right? And then you'll find out, do they even have a policy to deal with this? And then that starts a conversation. And if they do have a policy to deal with it, it serves two purposes, right? Having the conversation. Because first, now they know that you're a Muslim and you're concerned about this. But second, it sets an expectation that you're going to come back and expect them to deal with it. And now you're informed about the process. So, na'uzubillah, if something happens, now you know what to capture, and you're going to come back and give them everything they need to pursue some sort of accountability. So I hate that I'm having this conversation with you, but I'd rather you be prepared, because for me, because I've been a victim so many times, it's not if, it's unfortunately when, right? Whether it's you or someone else you know. So it's just good to be prepared, right? Now, I talked about aggression. Something else that's interesting is if you're not comfortable dealing with this, you can also reach out to professionals and have them come into your office and do something called an upstander training. I think in every city there are professionals who understand what this is, and being an upstander is exactly what you think the word is, right? A bystander watches what's going on, an upstander tries to get involved or change the situation and change the dynamic. And like I said, there are trained professionals who know how to do this. They'll talk you through the thought process of maintaining safety, or what steps to take, or how do you engage someone. You know, it's even as simple as you don't engage the attacker, you make sure the victim is okay, right? So you walk up to them, hey, are you okay? Can we take a walk? Things like that, right? But they would take you through the full process. I've got like 6 minutes, so I won't go through all the details. Now, as far as dealing with microaggressions go, there are small things that happen all of the time. When I was working at one of the largest tech companies in the world, I had a senior executive that I worked with, and I know that she liked me. I know that she supported me. She went out of her way for me all the time, and we had gone to a happy hour to celebrate, and she pulled me aside, put her arm around me. Muna, I love you, and you're gonna be great here. I want you to know that I love you, but you're never gonna get promoted if you go to another group. No one understands that thing on your head. And she was drunk. She didn't recall this conversation. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, you're really drunk that you said that to me, right? But she spoke the truth. And I was like, okay, at least I know. And I left that group. But you have to evaluate everything that happens, right? Is this a one-time incident? Is it something that's gonna consistently happen? If I'm gonna complain about this, what are the repercussions gonna be? Is this my boss that I'm complaining about, right? And how does that affect me, right? Are they gonna get rid of me, or are they gonna get rid of my boss, right? We all know information is power at work, and when you complain, there's this trade-off between having information and maintaining your ethics, right? So you have to look at the risk-reward and decide what you wanna do. But on another hand, I get contacted a lot on LinkedIn, and I had this conversation with one lady who called me and she said, I don't know what to do. I was working at this place and the guys were totally sexist and they were being patriarchal. They kept saying stuff about my scarf and I was so miserable there that I just quit. And can you help me find another job in a safe environment? And this is all over email, but if I had to boil that down, I thought, okay, the situation is these guys were jerks and she chose to quit. And there are so many choices in between on how that situation could have been handled. And if I have to say it simply, she lost because she quit her job and now she's out looking for another job and those jerks are still there. And I can guarantee you that if they were jerks to her, they were jerks to other people. And this isn't just a feminist issue or a women issue, because if you're an underrepresented minority, those people are equal opportunity haters, and I guarantee you everybody in this room will get it eventually, right? So, like I said, you have to evaluate the opportunity. If you've taken time to talk to your manager or your HR folks on how to deal with these things, it's good to be prepared, right? And the great thing about people who are jerks is that they're consistent and they will give you lots of opportunities to document what they've done, right? Documentation is really key, guys. If you checked in with your manager or your office on what they need for accountability, capture it. Capture it as many times as possible. I have this 3 strikes and you're out rule, because once, okay, maybe they were just stupid or tired. Twice, now I'm not sure if it was an accident. 3 times, that's a pattern, right? I will say, and this is something that I talk to my child about, so I know it works with adults, is the first time something happens, I like to say assume good intent and then communicate it, right? Be open, honest, and direct, right? And this is a little formula, but you should say something like, you know, I don't know if you meant this, but when you did this, it made me feel like that, so can you do this instead? There's no arguing with that because you're stating the fact of what happened. No one can tell you how to feel, and you gave them other choices to do instead. So it's not a confrontation, it's an education, right? And if it works with a toddler, it should work with an adult, I hope. But it's a great way to have the conversation and then follow it up with an email. Thank you for having that conversation with me, right? When that thing happened, it made me feel like this, so could you please do that instead? I appreciate your understanding. Having that paper trail is so important because it documents what happened, when it happened, with whom it happened, and if you were making it up, why are you gonna send yourself random emails? Even better, if you can copy other people who were involved in the conversation and saw it, because now you have corroborating witnesses and it stops being a he said versus she said situation. You can always email those emails to yourself to keep them, right? It doesn't have to stay on work email as well. And when you've got like 10 or 20 of these and you take the file over, right? It's a better conversation to have with your manager, right? If you feel comfortable, you can talk directly to the person, but you know, everybody has a different tolerance for conflict. So I'm just trying to give you guys options on what to work with. And going back to what Sister Mona was saying, if you see this happening to other people, it is very important to speak up. Don't just wait till it's only your fight. So with that said, I will talk a little bit about if you're in a work environment and you're like, man, I really want to be able to be Muslim at work, and I don't know how to do that because my job has nothing to do with being Muslim and we don't ever talk about religion. Most companies have a diversity and inclusion department. If they don't, they'll have an HR department. And if your company hired you, they want you there, it is really expensive to hire someone else. It is a lot of money to hire someone else, and they'd rather keep you than lose you and have to go find someone else, right? There's a lot of lost productivity in that process. And so I highly recommend that you join employee resource groups or affinity groups, right? A lot of companies have them for people of color, for the LGBTQ community, for women. You don't have to be part of any of those communities to join those groups, right? Create community for yourself, and if there isn't an organization, you can create one, right? Whether it's an interfaith group or a friendship group, or pull something from your company's vision or mission, right? Like the Social Innovation Club, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right? When there's Eid, get some samosas, get some chai, talk about Islam, right? Like the 5-minute 101 Islam conversation, and you'll be surprised that people are very interested. You know, it's interesting, like there's a Pew study that says something like 70% of Americans have never met a Muslim, right? And it's really weird for people to approach you and say, I like Muslims, can I meet you? Can you talk to me about yourself, right? That's like somebody walking up to a black person saying, I like black people, I've never met one. Can you talk to me about that? Like, it's just awkward, and people aren't gonna do that, so give them an opportunity to connect, and they're really thankful for it, right? You don't have to feel bad about waving the Muslim card. If that's the only thing you do, then it's a problem. But if you're just trying to be authentic and share about your culture, I think people appreciate that. And a personal story that I can talk about is that at my company, we have something called the Give Team, where local offices are given a grant that Give Team members can vote on for local nonprofits to receive that grant. And I had submitted my paperwork to propose a group called Muslim Community Support Services in Austin. And they support refugees. And I had submitted all the information early in January. And then the travel ban comes out. And then the next day is our Give Team meeting. And I'm like, great, the Muslim is gonna talk about the Muslim organization and all the refugees we serve the day after the travel ban comes out at my office. I was really uncomfortable, but I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. I got up there, I talked about the organization, I talked about all the refugees and the groups and the services we provide. And then people started asking questions, and I'll tell you, it was a little uncomfortable for me. They were asking very specific things. Well, are they from Iraq? Are they from Iran? Well, Iraq and Iran, right? Are they Sunni? Are they Shia? Was there sectarian violence where they came from? Are they gonna bring it back to Austin? And I'm no I don't know anything about politics, or, you know, I just kind of was like, well, I imagine they're trying to escape war and they really just want to come here and look for normalcy, and we're just helping them buy bus passes and get groceries and translation, right? Like, that's what the money's for. And, you know, I'm trying not to shake, I'm sitting on my hands, I'm just trying to be calm and cool. And a week later find out that the majority of the grant was given to the refugee organization from, I think, 14 organizations. Yeah. But people were really hungry for wanting to do something, and they had no idea how to. And a lot of people approached me later and said, thank you, how can I find out more? And I was really happy that myself and a couple of colleagues ended up doing that, right? It was kind of an accident, and the timing was weird, but people were appreciative. And so I know it can be scary, but just take the step, right? Like, your colleagues care about you, your company wants you to be happy, and so, you know, just do it. So the last thing I'll say is that while we may be facing difficulty, our ummah has faced a lot before. And even as this brother was saying, Muslims in America have been facing a lot, and we have a lot of wisdom and tradition to pull from our Black and Latino Muslim brothers and sisters, right? They've been fighting this battle. It's not new to them. And I'll share one story with you. There is a reverend, I want to make sure I say his name right. Does anyone know who Reverend Wade Watts is? Nabila, you're not allowed to answer.
I'm silent.
He's a reverend. He lived in Oklahoma, and he was the head of the NAACP. And while he was the head of the NAACP, during the 60s, the Ku Klux Klan decided that he had a target on his head. And they would harass him and his family and his congregation. They even burned his congregation down. They would call him and leave threatening messages at his home. And he chose to respond to them with love and humor and wit. And one example really tells the power of engagement. This reverend was at a restaurant, and he was eating a roast chicken, and the Grand Master of the KKK came into this restaurant with 15 or 20 men, and they wanted to threaten this guy and intimidate him. And the guy looked at him and he said, you should be careful what you do with that chicken. Whatever you do to that chicken is what we're gonna do to you, boy. The Reverend looked at him, looked at all the men, looked at the chicken, picked it up and kissed it. All of the 15 men that were with the Grand Master, part of the KKK, started laughing and walked out of the restaurant. They couldn't control themselves. And of course, the Grandmaster's mad, and he left too. But eventually, that guy quit the KKK. He became friends with the Reverend, and actually this one man with his wit and his humor and his love defeated the KKK in that city in Oklahoma. And this is a true story. You can check it on Wikipedia. I just want to remind you though, right? Like at work, every interaction that you take, everything you do is a job interview. So remember your brand. You can be the crazy, angry person, or you can be the thoughtful, witty, clever person. So think about that in all you do. We have a lot of wisdom in our prophetic tradition that we can pull from, right? I don't have to preach it to you. You know it and live it. So I encourage you all to be beautiful every day. You're empowered. You have everything you need to be amazing. You've received so much advice today. I'm thankful that you guys all came here. I'm thankful for ISNA to put the banquet together, for our sponsors who fed us, and for you all coming. Thank you so much.